and give copies of the tentative town budget to members of the town board. I just want to, okay, you've got it, good. There's another handout which Dennis had asked for, and there will be supplementary information. The town board always requests for sort of analytical information from finance. But this is the existing debt. This comes straight out of our CAFR document, and that was just something that Dennis had asked for, and it's for your review as well. But let me just summarize where we're at, and I'll do this quickly. It's a small meeting, and in some ways, a lot of the drama associated with the town budget has been resolved in years past. So I'll make this short and sweet, but I don't want to be so quick as to not give proper recognition where it's due. So number one, and I think this has always been the main concern of this town, is the proposed budget is in compliance and well under the New York State tax cap. And in a few minutes, I'm just going to ask Jeff, our finance director, to give the town board a little bit of a briefing on the tax cap calculation and the town's position with respect to that. But it's well in compliance with that, and that doesn't mean that there aren't important choices to make within that, but it's good to know. I also wanted to just start by thanking Jeff and also Janice Ganley in your office, Vicky, right here, my assistant, Alan Riff, deputy supervisor. You know, it's a process of going through a budget with roughly 600 lines and trying to really consider the needs of our town departments, and also thank our department heads who, you know, almost to a person presented really useful information and timely budget presentations. And obviously, some stuff is absolute necessity, and some is more on the kind of wish list, and making those determinations is not easy, and we appreciate their cooperation with that. The fact that I feel like it's important to repeat is that property taxes are really high in Rockland County in general, and that means we have among the highest essentially nationally or worldwide, really. And so we have to strike a balance between funding really essential services that the town provides, without which there would not be public safety, and making sure that folks can afford to live here. I am confident that the budget we put together, you know, 99% will be the budget this town board will want to adopt by majority vote in mid-November. But I'm also confident that with your eyes on it and in consultation, further consultation with our finance department, department heads, that changes that are appropriate will be made. And I know that we all share the view, and I certainly do, that the net impact of any changes, we have to stay under the tax cap, and we don't want to jeopardize critical services, and that's the balance that we all need to strike. I just want to list a couple of highlights. The tax cap, and Jeff will talk about this in a minute, you know, originally it was a 2%, it went down closer to 1%, depending on the time the state was calculating real estate values and other factors. It actually went up a little bit, and so our number that we have to stay under is an allowable increase to the tax levy of 3.4%. This budget comes in at 2.9. The tax cap itself is a complex calculation, and the allowable increase in the tax levy is determined by trends in real estate and pilot payments and other factors. And we're always faced with this problem, right, where the typical homeowner's tax bill increase may be bigger than the percentage change in the town budget, and everybody's always scratching their heads about that, and I'll have Jeff talk a little bit to that question. But it looks like about a $110 increase for the typical homeowner with a $200,000 assessed value home. And that increase, we all know, is partly driven by the shift in overall tax burden between residential and commercial property owners. And residential properties have been doing very well in Orangetown. It's something we should be proud of. I think we could take a little bit of credit for that, because the government is in a school district, and other public sector activities are a big factor in what maintains and improves property values. But that means that the shift has shifted that way, and homeowners are going to see a little bit of that in their tax bill as well. I want to remind ourselves of just a few of the things that we've done as a town board and staff to cut costs and to control spending. And I want to remind us particularly of how the shift over in our golf operations is just paid enormous dividends, around $800,000 a year of savings, paying down the debt that the golf programs ran up against the general fund. That was really great work, and it continues to pay a dividend, as I mentioned. The conversion of 2,260 streetlights over to LEDs, similarly, although it doesn't involve a reduction in the total number of personnel in town like the golf deals did, which we did through attrition, it does save a good amount of money, and it's essentially a technological efficiency. It comes to at least $200,000 a year. We're supposed to be closing on those ownership of the lights in short order, and I just want to congratulate the finance and our town attorneys and the town board. We reviewed proposals. We've contracted with installers and for the purpose of the LEDs, and they're going to be going up, and we're going to be saving a lot of money and also improving lighting and safety and reducing greenhouse gas production due to the energy savings. Was mentioned earlier, our sale of town land to JP Morgan Chase for a data center has really been an epic process. Many of the same folks involved, and that's going to help our tax base and help relieve taxpayers of a part of the burden. At around $7.5 million for 60 acres, plus perhaps as much as $40 million in remediation. You can do the calculation per acre of invested there just to get a clean site. I guess it's somewhere north of $700,000 an acre or something like that. Hopefully I'm not doing that math wrong. So town land is worth a lot of money, and it's good to see it develop for a great purpose. We had Orangetown, might have been just in here a couple of minutes ago. You know, the new fee for non-residents that was instituted a year or so ago has really paid off. I think it was, what is it, $100,000 or something like that was brought in new revenues.
I'd say about 120, 120.
So
120,000.
yeah, so OMM and other groups. So that's a new area of revenues. And I just want to mention as well, to give recognition to the grant writing program and the colossal amount of paperwork that goes into it. Collaboration between Stefan Muno and the Highway Department, Joe Moran back here, and as Commissioner of Environmental Management with the engineers, you know, the town attorneys, Vicky, you know, and Jeff's team in finance. It's really worth it though, and we've gotten some great results from that. We're paying for sidewalks, road improvements, green infrastructure, rail trail, drainage work, and also the traffic signals, which we all know a lot of them are really old and decrepit in the town. So it's exciting to see that money coming in for town projects from other sources. And I just want to mention Ellen Jaffe and David Carlucci as our state reps, who always play a role in that. And I also want to mention as well, you know, one of the ways the town has been saving money is by just managing it better. And Jeff has spoken to that a couple of times for the town board. But the timing and the manner of going to market for buying electricity, for example, and also for doing bonding transactions, I think has been handled in a way that has saved the town a lot of money. So those are some of the savings, I think, you know, just to help you explain to our public what is going well and how we work every day to try to keep the budget under control. Despite cost drivers, which are really always there and unfortunately always outpace our efforts to save money every year. And those are things like the county cost shifting of Board of Elections and community college chargebacks, which adds up to over $400,000 a year. Suez, and that's really the Public Service Commission, is bumping our cost for the water districts for hydrants by, I guess it's about $200,000, right, when you look at 12% over 2 years. I mean, that's a lot of money. You know, and personnel costs, of course, are always the real driver behind the town budget. And that's Partly it's salaries, a large part, but it's also healthcare, insurance. Healthcare is going up almost 10%. Workers' comp insurance up, I think we're charting almost 20% for 2018 on that. So these personnel costs are clearly the major cost driving factor in the cost of government. About 70% of the town budget is dedicated to paying our staff. I feel personally that we are operating with the minimum necessary staff. I don't think you can easily find anyone out there who we could do without. The police department, the highway department, the parks department, everybody is working hard, and unfortunately, the only way to really save money in government is to get rid of people, and the fact is that we need the people we've got, and so that's a tough nut to crack. I do want to give a little bit of credit to, the pursuit of efficiencies does really matter. In the governor's tax cap and the more recent focus on shared services, although that hasn't really borne out in terms of much in the way of savings, I think it's a good principle always to be looking for ways to save money. And I think we have done that, and that's helped us stem the tide a bit. But the cost of labor continues to go up. And I would encourage folks, if you're listening on TV or tuning in and watching this YouTube, that at some point look at the websites for the Association of Towns and the Conference of Mayors in New York, because they have legislative agendas that describe reforms in Albany that would help local governments to work more efficiently, and to look at those agendas and support them. Lastly, I want to thank our town staff, our fellow town board members. I really do look forward to working together to make any necessary adjustments in this final budget before its adoption in mid-November. Copies of it will be on the website. There's obviously going to be a need for follow-up and questions, and the finance department will provide any information that it can to help town board members discern maybe further areas of savings that are possible within the budget, or maybe areas where revenues could be enhanced in some way. So thank you very much. And Jeff, if you could just come up for a minute, I wanted you to just brief the board on the tax cap calculation, and also to talk a little bit about, so virtually all of our capital equipment purchases and road improvements and all these really expensive long-term investments are now captured by a bonding process. This budget doesn't speak to that. It sets a number for debt service, but the town board will need to review a comprehensive list of capital equipment and projects coming from our department heads and make determinations related to that. So if you could just talk a bit about the tax cap and the bonding process.
Sure. Thank you, Andy. So obviously, the tax cap this year is actually 3.4% and not the 2%, so you're probably going to get questions on why that limit is at that level. So the first thing is it's mated to the CPI, the inflation index, and that was up 1.84%. So that's the starting point. The calculation also allows for a growth in assessed value. In our Orangetown this year, we had an increase of 0.7%, so not quite at 1% in our total assessed value, but obviously that's good. The more we can grow our assessed value, the better it is, because if we have whatever our town budget is, if we're spreading that out over more assessed value because we've added assessed value, that actually reduces everyone's taxes a little bit because you have more people paying for it. So those two factors right there accounted to about 2.6% of the 3.4%. Then the other factor is pilots, and so what you do is you add this year's pilots, which were 1.96 million, and you subtract next year's pilots, which are expected to be 1.57 million. So that was roughly $400,000 right there. And then the final thing is whether you were under the cap the year before. We were, and that was 103,000. So you add that to it. So Net of all of those impacts is our tax levy cap increased 3.4% versus last year. And then the supervisor's budget has it going up 2.9%. And so in total, the tentative budget is almost $400,000 under the tax cap. If you'll notice, I also provided Excel spreadsheets with the revenues and the expenses. If you turn to the second to last page, what you'll see there is the capital items that have been requested for bonding. This is totals $13.2 million. What I asked all of the department heads to do is provide me with their needs, their capital needs for the next 2 years, being 2018 and 2019. So that's really what this is supposed to do. Our last bonding was in August of 2016. In 2017 and 2018, we'll pay off $4.5 million a year. So for over, which is pretty consistent. It was $4 million, now it's $4.5. So over a 2-year period, we will pay off $9 million. So to stay at level indebtedness, you know, we probably want to have a bond that is $9 million or less to not increase our overall debt service. In terms of when the bond is issued, obviously the board will authorize it either late this year or early next year. You're looking at issuance probably April, May. The first payment will not be until January of 2019. Therefore, this wasn't, you know, increased debt service is not included in the in this budget because we will have no debt service in 2018. The first payment will actually start in 2019. And then if you turn to the last page in the handout I gave you, I have listed all the macro trends and assumptions in here. The biggest one is obviously our workers' comp and risk, which I have going up at 20% again this year. You know, our auditors came in, presented. Last year was the first year we actually used fund balance, even though we've budgeted for it all 4 years I've been here. We actually used it last year. The reason for that was solely on the workers' comp side of it, where we incurred $2 million in losses and we had only budgeted $1.4 million. And so that was a negative $600,000, and we ate into our fund balance by $500,000 last year. So that was the entirety of that. Now this increase will take the total to about $1.7 million. The good news is we are tracking very well this year, so we're probably going to be below the 1.4, but it can fluctuate from year to year, and you get a big payment, and you can easily jump back over that figure. So everything's in there. I will also send the board the Excel file tomorrow, so you can sort it in any which way you wish. But at this point, I'll just take any questions.
Are you anticipating any other revenue increases?
We do have revenue increases for the sales tax and the building department. The building department is at 1.45. We were at 1.35. It's in the revenues. The first 3 pages in the it's in the revenue section there. So.
School tax?
That was kept at the tax collection fee, you mean? That was kept at 1/8%, so no increase. Okay, if that's it. Yeah, no, that's.
No, it's a lot of information, and you know, the board should take time to review it. When are we supposed to have a tentative budget? Do you remember the date on that? So within a month, we'll want to, you know, we should work together to research any adjustments, modifications, and get those requests for information to Jeff and his team as soon as possible. and look to see whether we can make any adjustments in the preliminary budget approval. And then, of course, there'll be a public hearing and final adoption in mid-November.